Next, we're going to talk about the metrics and the kind of underlying rationale behind PPC, the numbers game as it were. One thing with PPC, even when you're on the search network, it never appears in the vacuum. So your other channels of advertising are going to be very important, are going to be very helpful in supporting your PPC campaigns. So if you have a television commercial or a billboard or an email campaign, a lot of times you'll see a corresponding jump in your pay-per-click performance. So that's one thing to keep in mind. No marketing campaign ever exists in a vacuum. Your conversion pathway is going to be defined by your numbers, and how your numbers work, how people are converting, what page, how many touches this takes. You really need to understand that to make your PPC campaign perform well. And part of this is setting up analytics. Can we pause this for a second? I'm having trouble reading my screen. Well, no, it's the presenter notes are too small. Following the math, if you're not looking at the numbers, the performance of your various elements, you're going to spend money and not make money, and that's kind of counterintuitive to what we want to do. So remember, none of your advertising ever exists in a vacuum, and none of your conversions are ever going to happen on a one-click basis. There's always going to be a conversion pathway to where that PPC advertising is taking your visitor and making them work out. And last but not least, there's no one conversion that's ideal for PPC marketing. It really depends on your marketplace and your customers and how your sales process goes. So I could be looking for a lead. I could be looking for an online sale. I could be looking for a request for quote. I could just be looking for some awareness and education. Each one of those can be a conversion that I can track, measure, and work my PPC campaign against. So it's something to really keep in mind as you're looking at the numbers. Now, with this measurement, you need to really have systems in place to make it work. If you're not tracking it, you shouldn't be spending your money. There are lots of different ways to track it, and there are lots of different things you want to look at, but you need to track it. Once you track it, then you can work backwards and say, okay, based on my cost per click and my assumed conversion percentage, am I running an effective campaign? What do I need to go in and tweak? How do I need to improve this? What do I maybe need to pause? So let's talk about a few of the different metrics we look at. Now, the kind of core metric that a lot of people focus on is cost per click. And that's going to be how much an average price on a keyword by keyword basis, as well as a campaign and a account basis. How much are you paying per click on an ad to get a visitor to your website? A sister to that is something called quality score, and we're going to go into in depth on that later on. Quality score is a very vital component we need to look at. It's a little harder to measure. Google kind of keeps the veil on it a little bit, but I'm going to give you some really concrete examples later on. Along with clicks, you want to know how many clicks you get. You want to know what the click-through rate is, and that's going to be the number of clicks divided by the total number of times that keyword has created an ad impression, and it comes up as a percentage rate. Your conversion rate is going to be your number of conversions, whether it's a lead or a sale, divided by your total number of visitors. That's a key one. If you can move your conversion rate, you can really improve the performance from a financial status of your campaign. And then there's also conversion cost per sale, cost per lead, cost per acquisition. Lots of different ways of saying the same thing, really kind of with the definition being, what is my conversion type? Is it a lead or a sale? Cost per click, we just mentioned this briefly. Your total cost divided by your clicks, that gives you your cost per click. Click-through rate, clicks divided by impressions, and then conversion rate. The number of conversions you get divided by the number of clicks. So 45 visitors to a page from paid search, 9 of them are 45 conversions to a lead from 325 visitors. That gives me a 13.84 conversion rate. So the 45 divided by 325. A couple other cost per acquisition, and this is where it gets a little interesting. There are lots of different ways you can figure this out, but the shortcut way is to take your cost per click and to divide it by your conversion rate, and that's going to give you a cost per sale or cost per acquisition. So if your conversion rate in this case is 8%, and you're spending $2 a click to get that, that means one out of every 12.5 people, 8%, is actually turning into a lead. So that means it's going to take me 12.5 clicks to get that lead, $25. Your return on ad spend is how much money you bring in divided by how much money you spend. And there are 2 ways to look at your return on ad spend. The first is just the gross margin number, where you say, we made $500,000, we spent $70,000, my return on ad spend is going to be 714%. And that sounds really good. 714%, people like that number. But a more realistic number, one that's going to make your CFO happy, is to say, okay, we sold $500,000 worth of goods, but what was the cost of my goods sold, the COGS? So we want to take away the cost of goods sold, what it costs for us to make those widgets. And then we can look, okay, cost of goods sold, $400,000, so we made $100,000 in profit. We spent $70,000. We had a 1.42% net margin return on ad spend. That means for every dollar we spent, we made 42 cents additional. That's a pretty good number still. Okay, let's take a look at an example here. We have a software company, and they have defined a lead as being worth $70 based on their historical performance. So every time they get a lead, they know they're going to get $70 worth of revenue. Their product price may be greater than that, but they know they're going to get $70 worth of revenue from each lead. Of that $70, the front office has said $40 is what it costs to make the software, so we have $30 of potential profit there. The front office says we want to have a 15% profit margin, so you can't spend all that $30 to make that sale. You can only spend $19.50 after you take away the profit margin. So I have $19.50 to get every lead. If I'm spending $19.51, I'm costing the company money and not hitting my targets. If I'm spending $19.40, I still have some room to grow. Now, how can I figure out, okay, if it costs me $19.50 per lead, how much can I spend per click to get that? You take your conversion rate, which is 5% for this scenario, and you multiply it by the cost per lead. And that gives you a 98-cent cost per click. So if you're spending 99 cents per click, you're losing money. If you're spending 98 cents or below, you're making money. Now, this is an average number. There'll be some campaigns that spend more, there'll be some that spend less. But when you're looking at it in aggregate, you need to be religious in following this. You can't spend over. Otherwise, you have short-term job security. Okay, so we're not going to spend too much time on this, but there are a lot of different options on getting tracking set up for pay-per-click marketing. The easiest and one of the more robust ones actually is Google Analytics. Google set up Google Analytics as a loss leader for people to spend money on Google AdWords. People are saying, I'm spending all this money and I can't track it. I don't know what's happening. So Google went out, brought up a web analytics company, put the Google stamp on it. They keep on developing it. They keep on improving it. But Google Analytics ties in very nicely with AdWords. It has a lot of back-end functionality that makes a lot of your tracking efforts very, very easy. And all you need to do is really set up a couple reports and you can get the information you need. Google Analytics can also track ads from Bing, email, LinkedIn, Facebook, any campaign you can set up tracking in Google Analytics. It takes a little more work, but it's still pretty robust. And you know the best thing about Google Analytics? It's free. Marin Software, Kenshu, Efficient Frontier, DoubleClick, none of those are free. They all cost money, and some of them cost significant money. And these are all not just tracking, but they're also bid management. That's one of the big differences. So Google Analytics, it'll do tracking. It does some really entry-level bid management. But Marin Software, Kenshu, and DoubleClick, and Efficient Frontier, they have bid management as the core of the platform. Everything else is secondary. So they go in and they say, based on the performance of these ads and these keywords, what is going to be the best way we can bid up for this, manage the ads, target the ads to get the best return on your dollar. Now, Marin Software, you can't play with it for less than $500 a month. And if you're running an industrial strength PPC campaign, you can be spending between $15,000 and $20,000 a month, but that's for a $250,000 campaign a month. Generally, when you're doing something like that, you have a team of people. This session is focused more on the 2 or 3 person team, the kind of get your own hands dirty, not having a director sort of thing. All of these are really good at tracking. I like each one of these. They all have their strengths and their weaknesses. We personally at Beasley Direct use Google Analytics and Marin Software, and it's really dependent on the size of the client. The bigger, more robust platforms also need to get a lot of data to be really effective, where Google Analytics can be a little more effective with a little smaller ad buy. So just different ways of tracking, but you need to have something like this set up, even if it's just a Google Analytics.